Hey guys, today we're back with another versus review. And today on the channel we'll be doing the versus review between the 45 ACP and 10 millimeter, or better off to say, does the 10 millimeter cartridge make the 1911 relevant again? Stay tuned for this one. Alright guys, we're back. Once again today in this video, it's pretty much going to be a versus review between a 10mm 1911 and a 45 ACP 1911. What we're going to be discussing in this video is, does the 10mm cartridge make the 1911 relevant again? This is loaded, so we will set this magazine off to the side. The gun is safety checked and it is safe to talk about. This magazine is not loaded, and the gun is empty as you see here. So they're both safe to talk about. I have a little cheat sheet here to my left that will talk about more of the ballistic standpoint of both calibers, so I'll be checking in on that every now and then. But this come to my mind whenever I was actually in a 1911 group that talked about, is the 1911 even still relevant anymore for everyday carry or law enforcement use, or even a military standpoint use? And that's what we're going to try and cover today. So this one right here is the Dan Wesson Kodiak 10mm in a 6-inch barrel 1911. I've had this one now for approximately almost 3 years. It's right at 3-year mark. So I know about every ins and outs of this gun right here. I actually had it custom made for me through Dan Wesson whenever I was in the police academy. So it's got a special place in my heart, but I actually knew what I was looking for and wanted whenever I bought this, because if I'm not mistaken, it cost me $2,500 to build. This one right here is a 6R 1911 45 ACP stainless rail. This one, the only thing I've done to it different is put some different 6R wood grips on it. It actually comes with like a black wood type of grip, and I put a full-length guide right in it as well. But this is one of the first firearms I ever actually had on my channel that was higher end to review. Way back even, and I think it was 2017, 2018 is whenever I actually originally reviewed one of these. I sold it off to get a Dan Wesson, sold that Dan Wesson off to get a Wilson Combat, sold them Wilsons, got a Nighthawk, sold that Nighthawk, got an Ed Brown, and even ended up making my way to a Dan Wesson Kodiak. But this is one that I did pick up a while back, because just this gun in general, it has a special place to me, because it, like I said, it was one of the first higher end weapons I'd ever bought myself personally and reviewed, and I hated that I had to let it go whenever I did, because I was kind of in a rough point whenever it comes to money wise. So I did have to sell it, and I ended up upgrading this, that, and the other. But this is one of my favorite 1911s that I've ever had, and that I still have to this day. So the reason that I'm talking on, does a 45 still, or this 10mm make the 1911 platform, I guess you would say, useful again, reliable again, or, to where we would actually possibly use it for a law enforcement standpoint, is because 45 ACP has been a caliber that's been around for a very long time. They used it in World War I with the original 1911, used it in World War II, 1911A1, all the way up through Vietnam, and it was finally replaced by the Beretta M9 in 1982 or 83, if I'm not mistaken. One of the big reasons that they actually replaced it for was because whenever they actually got into but right before the War on Terror, people started actually shooting handguns with actual accuracy using their sights. Even though the original 1911s did have sights, it was meant to point and shoot. And whenever they got the Beretta, they started actually trying to shoot accurately with a pistol. And the 45, just at that time period, limited capacity, which the Beretta had 15 rounds, but with a limited capacity about either 7+1 or 8+1, the 45 was pushed to the side, and more Wonder 9s come out, such as a Glock. You have the Beretta, even though the high power has been around a long time. A lot of companies started carrying around high powers, but the 45 or 1911 platform got pushed to the side a little bit. Well, in 1986, whenever the Miami-Dade shootout happened, where a few FBI agents got killed and other ones got severely wounded, they switched and wanted to make a 10mm, which is what this caliber right here is. It was a lot more powerful than a 9mm, 38 Special, and 357. It was pretty much one of the first hand cannons in an automatic system. So they run with the 10mm for a few years, but a lot of the smaller officers could not handle the 10mm recoil, so they made it into a 40 Smith & Wesson, and it pushed 10mm to the back burner. Well, here in 2022, 10mm has been coming back ever so slightly every year, and now we've got 6R releasing a new P320 and 10mm. You've got B&T releasing the AP9 or AP10 and 10mm, and just so many different firearms are now produced in 10mm to where I thought this would be a good time to talk about the 10mm and the 1911 platform. I think Colt was one of the first ones to release a 10mm in the 1911 platform with a Colt Delta Elite, which was a very nice firearm back in the day, but with as powerful as the 10mm is, the original ones had really bad problems with the frame breaking on them because of how powerful the round was. So they redesigned the frame a little bit in the first Delta Elites and released them, and I believe that fixed the frame problem pretty well. But even today, if you pick up a original Delta Elite, I would advise either put it in your safe or resell it if you're actually planning on shooting it, because they're not a gun that I could say to shoot a lot of 10mm through, because you will end up having problems with it. But anyway, getting back to the original reason we're here, 10mm puts out a lot more powerful of a round than 45 does. Some of the most powerful 10mm that I looked up just while I was researching for this video was Buffalo Bore Tac XP, which you're looking at 774 foot-pound of energy, which is knocking on 41 Magnum's door. And there was even a company that I'd never even heard of that produced a round for the 10mm that put out 1,015 foot-pound of energy. And it was called RBCD ammo, which was a 77 grain bullet traveling at approximately 2,420 foot per second, which is friggin' booking. That being said, I don't know how well that ammo performs, but at 1,015 foot-pound of energy, that is a absolute hand cannon. That's almost pushing 44 Magnum territory. Most of your 10mm nowadays is loaded about around 500 to 600 foot-pound of energy, which is slightly less than the 774 that I was quoting earlier. That's by Buffalo Bore. There's plenty of other ones that make full load 10mm, such as Double Tap. And I'm trying to think of Underwood is another one right off the top of my head. But you know, if you actually are looking at 10mm ammo, you can even find companies that are downloading them enough to a 40 Smith & Wesson, which you're looking right around 400 to 350 around there foot-pound of energy. Which, if you're going to be carrying around a cannon, why not get the loads that are actually loaded for 10mm? That being said, 10mm just is a lot more powerful than a 45 ACP. You still have that limited capacity of 8+1. Some standard capacity round or magazines can even get it to a 9+1, but most of them that you find is still an 8+1. 45 ACP, you're still looking at limited capacity as well. 8+1 to sometimes 7+1 in the original Colt mags. With 45, you're looking at some of the hottest ones I could find with 616 foot-pound of energy, so approximately 150 foot-pound of energy less than some of the most powerful 10mm. But a big difference here is that most normal 45 ACP plinking ammo and everything else is right at 350 to 450 foot-pound of energy. So approximately 150 to 200 foot-pound of energy less than normally loaded 10mm. So as you can see, there is a decent amount of difference whenever it comes to power behind both of these weapons just by a small caliber change. Something here as well that we haven't talked about yet is that both the 45 and the 10mm have very similar recoil tendencies. Sometimes with this 6-inch, I actually feel like it has less recoil than most 5-inch 45 ACPs. But most of the time, they're right on the money with each other whenever it comes to muzzle rise and how quick you can get back for that second shot and everything else. I have not had a 6-inch 45 ACP, if I'm not mistaken. I've only had this 6-inch 1911, but I've even had, like that Dan Wesson Valor I had a few years ago. It was a 5-inch 10mm, and even the recoil tendencies on that was very close to this. So The original reasoning behind the 45 ACP was that in a time of war, you cannot use a actual hollow point. So in reference with 45 ACP, where it's a full metal jacket, it's a round ball, whenever you actually shoot, say, a target or whatever else with it, where it is a round ball and it's going slower than the speed of sound, whenever it strikes your target, let's say, it will most likely deplete a lot of its energy before exiting the other side of it, which, like we'll say 9mm, if you shoot something and it's full metal jacket 9mm round ball, it will go straight through your entrance and out the back without depleting a lot of energy, as long as you don't hit something like bone. That being said, that was a big thing about 45 ACP whenever it first come out, is that it had quote-unquote knockdown power, because it would deplete a lot of its energy into whatever you shot. With 10mm, it acts almost the same as 9mm, but not as bad. It will deplete a lot of its energy through the target before exiting the other side, but it will not do a full depletion, and like a 45 most of the time will, unless you pick the correct hollow point ammunition with it. 10mm overall, though, guys, is just a lot better round than 45 ACP if you're doing anything but, say, a full metal jacket. With 45, with a full metal jacket, you should get almost to maybe a little bit less from almost, but you should get a lot of energy depletion into your target. With 10mm, depending on how thick your target is or whatever else, I've seen it either deplete somewhere around half the energy to 3/4 energy, but with a full metal jacket, I've never seen it deplete a full round into it, because it almost always exits the other side. But now whenever you get into hollow point ammunition, it does its job very well and does the penetration that was needed in the FBI standalone test and all that, and it gets the job done pretty well and leaves a pretty nasty mark. And I've actually seen it with some pictures that they actually showed in one of my forensics class what 10mm will do versus 45, 9, and all that. But not even looking from a self-defense standpoint, but from an actual even hunting standpoint, 10mm is one of the widely used cartridges in, say, Alaska or the Rocky Mountain stuff, where people go hunting for big game, to where there might be grizzly bears, brown bears, stuff that is higher up on the food chain than humans are if you're not having a actual weapon with you. A lot of people, the debate is between a 44 Magnum or 10mm on which one's a better one to carry. I myself would rather have a 10mm, say, in a 1911 such as this one, or a Glock 40 with 15 rounds of capacity, versus a 44 Magnum with 6 rounds of capacity, and very similar, but power. But even then, 44 is still about 150 to 200 foot-pound of energy, heavier than a 10mm whenever it comes down to power-wise. But even then, I would rather still have a 10mm for actual second round and everything else whenever it comes to something charging at you, such as a brown bear, grizzly, or black bear, something around them lines. But getting back to more of the self-defense standpoint behind it, if you're running the correct ammunition, 10mm is one of, if not the best, self-defense handguns to have whenever you're looking at these small, limited capacity magazines. I know right now law enforcement's all switching to the 9mm, and I'm 100% behind that, because if somebody's shooting at you, you need to put more rounds down range than just a single round. Yes, that single round might be something that will incapacitate the target, but relatively speaking, handguns are not the best in the world for one round incapacitation shot. That's why I'm 100% behind the 9mm for law enforcement rather than 40 caliber or 45 or 10mm. But whenever you're looking at special operation teams such as LAPD, a lot of them still use 10mm, or not 10mm, but 45 1911s. I remember I watched a video one day and they was all carrying Nighthawks. Some of them was carrying Kimbers, but most of them was carrying 45 ACP 1911s, and barely any of them was carrying Glock pistols. That's why, to me, relatively speaking, I think the 10mm cartridge just does make the 1911 more useful nowadays, and actually brings it back to say, hey, this is an actual viable round that we can use for self-defense, or for duty usage, or for hunting or anything else. And I think that now with as much power as a 10 millimeter has behind it, relatively speaking, coming from all the gun companies, I think that 10 millimeter is now 100% more popular than 40 caliber, because 40 caliber is almost a dead round. But 10 millimeter, relatively speaking, is gaining enough momentum back to where you're almost getting ready to see it become very popular, just as the 9 millimeter. 10 millimeter is a popular round, but it's not as popular as a 45 or 9 millimeter. But it's getting back there in popularity because people are just now understanding what the 10 millimeter can do and what it does do. So guys, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I know it's a little bit longer than most of the videos I make whenever it comes to versus reviews, but this is something that I've been thinking about doing for a long time, and I hope I've explained myself pretty well whenever it comes to the energy depletion of a 10 millimeter and 45, and just how more accurate a 10 millimeter is than a 45 ACP. Because even speaking on that standpoint, 10 millimeter, the drop range after, it starts to drop pretty heavily after about 100 to 125 yards. But a 45 ACP at 25 yards, you can even see about 6 inches, and even at 50 yards, I think it's about a foot there. So, where the bullet is actually traveling less than the speed of sound and how heavy it is, you can actually, if you're really good, you can actually see the bullet start to actually come out of the end of the gun because it's traveling so slow. And I can remember even shooting it at longer ranges, you can actually see it start to fall. So you have to, most of the time, if you're aiming at something that's about 100 yards out, you have to aim about a foot over it. And you can actually see the bullet lob in because it's traveling so slow. Just very interesting overall, especially when you get into ballistics and accuracy and everything else. But 10 millimeter to me makes the 1911 platform relevant again. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. This is up for debate. I know some people think that 45 is God's caliber, and I love it. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love 45. But to me, I've got a little bit more love towards the 10 millimeter than the 45, especially now that I know a lot more about ballistics and everything else. But guys, once again, thank y'all for viewing. Let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are on this subject, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. But thank y'all again, and I'll see y'all in the next video.